Hi everyone, we will be starting quite shortly. I'm just waiting for a few more people to join, and then we'll get started. Well, I think we've had a couple of minutes to get everybody, get those that are going to be joining. So we will make a start. So for those of you that have joined, thanks very much for joining us today. I am Chris Brown. I work for SecZetta, and we are going to be presenting alongside Arctic Group today to give you a flavour for what both companies can offer people in the Nordic regions and specifically in Sweden. I'm going to be handing over to Fredrik Astrom from Arctic Group in a second, who's going to talk to you a little bit about what those guys do, along with Anders Örs, and then pass on to Jen Craxner from SecZetta to take you through a bit of a demo so that we can show you really how we approach the problem of third parties and how we handle onboarding and offboarding in a timely manner and really understanding those sort of things. So with that in mind, if there's any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and I will pass over to Fredrik to make a start. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Like Chris said, my name is Fredrik Astrom, and I work as the CEO here at Arctic Group. And I'm really happy and proud that we can have this webinar with SecZetta today. For a couple of minutes, I will tell you very briefly about Arctic Group. You're of course welcome to contact me afterwards for more information. I don't have that much time today. I'm not the important one. Arctic Group is a privately owned consulting company based in northern Sweden. We have chosen a strategy to work focused on in a few different niche areas, and I will talk about them later. Unlike many other consulting companies, we have chosen to work close to fewer customers, today about 40. We have a long and large commitments based on a long-term relationship with these customers. And we have cutting-edge expertise at the European level in our niche areas. Some of the customers we work with, you can see them in the picture, is Telia, Max Burgers, Vattenfall, and Metria. Others we can't mention due to security reasons. And we develop and manage systems that just have to work around the clock all year around. A stated strategy that we work by is to enter into partnership with suppliers that strengthen our competence and delivery. You can see them in this picture, and today we're proud that we can run this webinar together with SecZetta, of course. And we always want to work for the customer's best interests and act as an independent partner so that we can find the best solution for customers. Therefore, we are also partners with various suppliers in the IAM area, for example. In this picture, you can see some of our customers. Today, I will not go into any more details on how we work with them, but feel free to contact me if you want to know anything more. We are incredibly proud of our customers, and they're generally, as you can see in this picture, large companies and well-known brands. As I started with, we have selected some areas in which we have deepened our expertise. These are Atlassian's product portfolio, and we're a gold partner with Atlassian. In the IAM area, which we have worked with for a very long time, we have several partners and do assignments not only in Sweden, also in Europe and in the Middle East. Other areas we have worked with for a long time are system integration and system maintenance. And system integration is something that's often recurring in our assignments, one way or another. We manage quite many systems today for our customers, and then we handle everything from support to development of new functionality. And my last picture, this is our vision. This is how we want to be perceived by our customers and by our staff. We must in all situations act professionally and at the same time be very easy to work with. That's how we can continue to bring high value to our customers. That was all from me today. I will send over the word and picture to you, Anders. Please continue.
Thank you, Fredrik. Yes, thank you. And as Fredrik mentioned, we have one niche area, which is the IAM area, and I lead the team at Arctic Group, which work in this area. We are about 15 persons right now, working constantly with IAM projects around Sweden, but also around the world. The team that we are running have been around at Arctic Group for actually more than 20 years right now. It's been a super interesting journey, I would say, working for a lot of different customers. Primarily, as Fredrik also mentioned, we work with big customers. And follow them around. It's over the 20 years, it's been a really interesting to see how new technique evolve, new standards, new protocols, and also follow different products, what has happened in the IAM area with these products. So what we have done at Arctic Group, we're trying to pick and work together with the companies and products we really believe in will give benefit to customers in the IAM area. What we have seen also over these 20 years is really that the IAM area has evolved a lot, really interesting, but also there's a lot of gaps. And as you know, you can read the newspapers almost every day. You have data breach, cyber attacks, whatever you name it. So I think everyone can agree there is gaps in this area. We work a lot in the IAM area. We talk about authentication, like using YubiKey keys, multi-factor authentication, everything around that. We have authorization. What are you allowed to do using role-based, attribute-based control, etc. A lot of interesting stuff. Then you have this identity federation that we work heavily in, like different protocols, SAML2, OpenID Connect. And another area, governance and lifecycle, that I will talk a little bit more about. One interesting thing today is everyone talks about a common goal, which is called zero trust. You could almost say it's like a buzzword. The good thing with this concept of zero trust is basically that all vendors, all product companies have a move in the same direction. And over the 20 years, I would say that this is the first time that all companies move in that direction. However, I would say in order to get a good IAM program up and running, you need to start with a foundation. You need to get in control of your users, if they are internal or external, get in control of system, application, and basically what they can do in the systems. This is where you start. You need to have control. If you look at this with today's challenges, you know, the workforce is moving around. It works from home, it works at the office, and pretty much from anywhere. You have external partners, consultants, contractors, etc. That is growing in each company. They are increasing the use of external workforce. So in order to handle this, you need to have quick decisions, rapid onboarding, I would say, get them quickly on board. And this always brings a risk to your company. So how do you actually handle that risk? And with all this said, we have found a company and a product that actually fills a big, huge gap, I would say, in many IAM programs. And this is what SecZetta will talk more about. So I will hand over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Anders. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm excited to talk with this group about SecZetta, our third-party identity and risk solution. Great introduction to the gap that we fill so far. You know, really the bottom line, what SecZetta is to our customers is that non-employee system of record. And, you know, while we've talked a little bit about that to this point, I do want to go in a little bit more to what really is a non-employee, right? Why are they different? Why is it a different population, and why should they be treated differently than employees? And typically, you know, when you think about an employee, you can really define specific characteristics about them. Things like they're validated internally by an organization prior to being hired. They're vetted, they're recruited. Typically, there's some sort of reference checks or background potentially that happens. So you really know who you're hiring when you bring in an employee, and that employee is then dedicated to your organization. They have a vested interest in that organization's success and a very kind of ongoing relationship. You know, they're integrated, their income is controlled by that organization. They're managed by HR and a manager, right? They have really a singular, defined, and well-managed process for bringing them on board. So they're kind of a very well-defined population of people. Now, on the flip side, when you talk about non-employees, things change quite a bit, right? In general, if you're talking about a non-employee that's a contractor or a partner or an affiliate, you really just assume that they were validated by that partner. It's not a matter of necessarily vetting the person that's coming in and doing work for your organization. But you kind of assume that it's been done. That person, that non-employee, may work for multiple organizations at the same time. They may be doing different things for those organizations, so they're not really directly affected by the economic success of the host or the sponsoring organization. They're you know, really very focused on potentially doing their job well, but not necessarily on the organization's success. Quite often, they're also engaged temporarily or intermittently at an organization. So they're not dedicated, they don't have an ongoing relationship. And generally, we don't even track necessarily their history with an organization when they come and go. Quite often that's lost. So, you know, they're also managed very differently. You know, they don't have the host organization's HR taking a big responsibility in managing their life cycle. Instead, it's typically their manager out at the partner organization or the third party organization. Maybe they're sponsored internally, but those people really need to have a more coordinated, collaborative management effort around the life cycle of that non-employee. And all this really results in kind of disjointed and unknown processes, particularly when it comes to the multiple types of non-employees that might be engaged at an organization. So there's typically not a great single system of record or source of truth for every non-employee, because, you know, that's not just contractors, that's not just maybe IT service vendors, that's also partners or affiliates or suppliers. So there's a lot of different people that fit that non-employee umbrella that really should be treated differently across them. So this is why we really consider non-employees differently, and this is why there's typically a gap in identity programs around non-employees, because they don't have those defined processes to rely on when it comes to their life cycle. So what does that really look like? You know, when we think about how we approach identity and access management for employees versus how we do that for non-employees. You know, I've gone into this a lot, but just to kind of give you a visual for that, when you think about an employee, again, those are hired, managed, vetted by an HR team prior to coming on board. And the result of that is that their data gets put into an HR system. So generally, there's an HR system in place where all of that employee data is not only input at onboarding, but also maintained proactively by HR and by, you know, potentially a manager within the organization. So as identity professionals, we see this HR system as a fantastic authoritative repository that we can rely on in order to properly grant and manage access for those employees. And whether that is, relying on it in a sense that we have, manual effort that's happening based on that data, or directly connecting it to an IGA or an IAM solution in order to kind of automate much of the onboarding and offboarding processes that it takes for employees. What this results in is a very nice connected and defined process for employees. So we know who they are, we trust them, we trust the data in that authoritative repository of HR, and we rely on it to make sure that we're effectively governing the access that they get, including removing it when that person separates or is terminated from the organization. So all of the changes, all the differences with non-employees affect this process. So basically, when you think about a non-employee, many times we might vet the third-party organization at that org level. So we'll understand, potentially the risk associated with the organization. We'll negotiate contracts. We'll understand the kind of business that we're going to do with them. And we give a green light. We say, yes, let's, start this relationship and start a business relationship with this third-party organization. At which point in time, people need to get access to systems in order to, do their job or affect that relationship. This is where that process falls apart, because typically there's obviously not an HR system, right? HR is not the place to put these non-employees for a variety of reasons. But you might end up with email strings that go around, phone calls, help desk tickets. Quite often, a service desk ticket is how some of these people end up getting onboarded and given access. But it's a very kind of a disparate process, decentralized, a lot of different complex relationships and contributors involved in that. But in the end, those people still hopefully get the access that they need in order to do their work. Now, what happens, this gap that we're kind of looking at where all these disparate processes are, number one, the org level data and the vetting doesn't generally flow through to the people that are getting access from that organization. So if you're lucky, you'll know what organization they come from, in those downstream systems, but most of the time you don't even know that, much less the risk associated with that organization, the status of your relationship with that organization, right? So at onboarding, great, we might check all of this and say, this person should come on board from this third-party organization because we just signed a contract and we're getting ready to do some work with them. But 4 months down the road when that contract expires, most of the time that's not connected to the person that gets the access downstream. So this gap that exists is where SecZetta fits, right? We come in as that system of record, as that authoritative source for non-employees, and we do it in a way that's able to accommodate for all of the different types of non-employees and all of the variety of workflows that are necessary in order to properly manage their life cycle. And that includes allowing collaboration around their life cycle management, so allowing all of the people that need to contribute to that, from the sponsor to perhaps a project manager to even a vendor manager, someone external to the organization can have some input into that. We also set up multiple workflows depending on if it's an IT service vendor or a supplier or any other non-employee type that needs their own unique workflows and processes for onboarding and offboarding. We're able to support those across the board. And then finally, the other thing that we do that's very specific to third parties is we assess the risk of that person. So we look not only at the organizational risk at that third party level, which many organizations are doing right now, but we take into consideration the person. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about how we do that in a few slides. I'd like to, point out here, just in a broader scale, how SecZetta fits into a mature identity program. So there are a lot of systems and technologies generally that are in play and involved in an identity program, right? And like we've talked about, that can start with an HR solution all the way to directories and applications that folks are needing access to. So this really shows how SecZetta not only connects to kind of IGA solutions downstream to push that non-employee data, but we also take in a lot of relevant detail from HR solutions or vendor management solutions or third-party risk management solutions as well. We're able to take data about organizational hierarchy, contracts, projects, third-party relationships, all of that we can consume and apply to these non-employee populations. So we have a really good idea of who this person is, what their engagement is at an organization, what departments they're working with, what teams they're on, who their sponsors are, because all of that is relevant to properly managing their life cycle. And we open up the capabilities to contribute to that to a wide range of end users. So we go beyond human resources and procurement. We also can involve identity teams, as I mentioned, the business line, liaisons, external liaisons at partners or vendor organizations. And again, supporting all the different non-employee population types that we might run into. And this is a very small group of what we see, somewhat representative, but this goes everything from the contractors we've really talked about to even separated employees who no longer live in an HR solution, but perhaps still need access to certain systems for benefits or the like. And by the way, non-human entities are also a type of non-employee. These are entities, bots, RPA, devices. Those are things that get access very similar to a person, to a human, and that access needs to be managed. So in those instances, we're able to really line up workflows to do similar things for non-human workers as well. And again, all of that passes to not only IGA solutions, but as we build these authoritative records, we're able to allow any system that's reliant on that information to really access that by either pushing it to them or allowing them to pull it from our system. And that, again, includes IGA solutions. That can include privileged access management solutions, even ITSM tools to create service desk tickets, or even access management. You think of Ping or some of these other systems that might need to rely on an authoritative record. We're able to push that data to them so that those systems can appropriately manage the access in some of those downstream resources. So I mentioned I wanted to talk just a touch more about risk and our approach, the SecZetta approach to risk. Just to give you an idea of how we apply risk at an identity at an individual level. We're going to imagine we have a team of contractors coming from a third-party organization. And in those cases, perhaps we've assessed the risk of that third-party organization. So they have they lie in a low, medium, high, or critical risk threshold that we've assessed based on security questionnaires or the like. When we onboard a team of contractors from that third party, we look at each of them individually. We think, okay, where are they working from? Do they get remote access? Are they being issued a device? Have we completed some kind of background check or security clearance on them? All of this data that we're building as we onboard that person, we can apply risk to, as well as connecting to external systems to gather data about those people, whether it's a training system, whether they've completed training, if there's a particular licensure or credential that they need, we can check those systems. And what can happen is, maybe these three contractors that we're onboarding, one is an engineer that's working 100% remote. One is an engineer, perhaps that's coming on site to do a little bit of work, and the other is a project manager. In those cases, all three of those people will have very different, traits individually. We can place them in different risk categories based on those individual traits. So we're not just relying on that third-party vendor's risk score. We're actually looking at the people themselves, place them into these thresholds, and then allow their risk score to enable well-informed, risk-based decisions, not only within SecZetta, so within the onboarding process or revalidation processes. We can also allow it to inform those decisions in downstream systems like IGA solutions. So if an access request comes in for one of them and they have an elevated risk score, maybe we want to require additional approvals for that, okay? So this is how we can use that risk score and how it's calculated. So I'm going to, no more slides, this is my last one. I just want to introduce a demo that I want to walk through, and hopefully all of the things that I've talked about really come together within that demo. So just to give you a glimpse into what we're going to do, we have in this demo, Z Corp, which is kind of in the center here. Z Corp is our organization that has SecZetta in place to manage its non-employee populations. So Z Corp is putting their partners, their suppliers, even their bots into SecZetta to have their lifecycle and authoritative records managed. In this case, in our demo, we're gonna talk specifically about a consulting organization that Z Corp does business with, and that is Acme Consulting. Z Corp quite often brings in consultants from Acme in order to do work on various projects. Acme is a trusted third-party vendor to Z Corp. So what we've done is Acme has their very own portal to manage the people that come and go and really do things like request onboarding, terminate them, do all of those things. So we're going to go through a quick demo of what does it look like if Acme needs to onboard a new consultant. What kind of process can we support to onboard that consultant, starting at the Acme Consulting level? How does that pass through SecZetta to do additional things like sponsor reviews, policy checks, risk checks, and then the profile creation, and then downstream from that profile creation within SecZetta, what can we do with that data? Well, we can talk more about how we can create a digital identity, run a joiner workflow to perform onboarding for that consultant, how we can notify the consultant or the vendor admin, or potentially ticket creation for onboarding tasks. So those are all the things that can follow, but really the boxes here are what we're going to see happen within SecZetta. So I will exit out of my PowerPoint here and jump into that demo. So what we're looking at here is, as I mentioned, Acme, our third-party vendor, has their very own external portal to get in here and do this. It doesn't require internal Z Corp access. This is exposed for Acme to get into and do all of this management. Now, we're going to onboard a new consultant, and I think I have Philip here is our random user we're going to onboard as our consultant. Philip, if he were, he could technically visit the site when we have it enabled and do a self-registration. So we could invite him to come complete his data in order to kick off that onboarding process. So what we're going to do instead, I want to show a little bit more collaboration. In this case, Linda Mason is a vendor admin at Acme. She actually has those capabilities to do things like onboard new consultants. She can also terminate them and so forth. So she has a login for this portal. When we log in as Linda, you can see she has a list of consultants. And again, Linda is an Acme Consulting employee, so she is a non-employee to Z Corp. But she's able to see all of the different Acme consultants that are engaged and take action on them. She also can, again, invite Philip, our new consultant. So when she clicks that request form, what we're seeing here is a very basic, what's essentially going to turn into an invitation for Philip to register. So she can just put in a little bit of information for him. And this form, obviously can be expanded upon. So if there's additional data that we want to collect from Linda, we can do that here. SecZetta is a no-code solution. That means that any changes to these forms is a configuration, something that can happen near real time in order to make those sorts of updates. The other thing that Linda is being asked to provide, obviously we've assigned the vendor as Acme because he's being onboarded within this portal, but Linda can also assign particular projects or engagements or contracts, statements of work to Philip, and she knows that Philip is coming in to do some, let's say, SailPoint implementation services. Okay, so he's going to be working on that particular project. So we will submit that form. Now, what's happening is the next step that we've configured, and again, even every step in this workflow is configurable. But the next step that Z Corp is requiring is for Philip to actually register. So what's happened is Philip has received an email that actually is saying, and I've got it here over on my other screen. Let me open this guy up so that I can show you. Philip has received an email, says you've been invited to register. Please click the link below to provide and submit your profile data, right? So he's going to select this, this link in order to get registered. So I've selected that. This is where Philip now comes. So Philip is now self-registering or completing some required self-registration processes. We've obviously already completed certain fields that have been provided by Linda, but Philip is also being asked to give his mobile number. Philip is in the States, so we're gonna put a US number here. He's being told what project he's on, and then he's being asked to essentially accept an acceptable use policy. So we can present other things to Philip if necessary. If there's an NDA or some other policy that he needs to agree to, we can either present it for him to accept here, or we can require upload of signed documents or anything else that's necessary. So we're submitting this. Now the next step that we've added to this workflow is that Philip needs to prove that he is who he says he is. So we haven't really met Philip at this point, right? We're kind of taking his word on this registration data and Linda's word. Maybe we want to go a step further and make sure that Philip is in fact Philip, according to some kind of proving data that we have access to. So Philip's being asked, verify my identity. When he selects this, we're actually being taken to do this process. And what he would do is he would see some of this within the UI here within our website. We're going to select what country he's in, and this proofing mechanism does work globally. So it's nearly 200 countries that we can support in these ways. Obviously, we have some demo data that's in here, so just kind of to be able to show you. But as I work through this proofing process that Philip technically is doing, we're doing a couple of different checks. Ultimately, though, what we're going to do is allow Philip to present his government-issued ID and take a selfie that is, a live picture of himself, so that we can biometrically compare the data in that government repository, and make sure that we know exactly that Philip is who he says he is. So in this case, we're going to use a driver's license. We do have the option to do things like passports or other government ID cards. It's 6,000 plus types of identification that can work within this identity proofing function. In this case, again, though, we're going to do driver's license. Now, what we're seeing here is different than what in reality Philip would see. So in reality, as soon as he selected to proof via that driver's license, Philip would get a text on his mobile device, and that would tell him to go through the process that we're going to see here in our browser. So he would be guided on his mobile device to upload to take a picture of his driver's license front and back, and then to take a snapshot of himself. So we're going to see what that looks like here. First, the front of the driver's license. We'll use that guy. So, and as we do this, it's checking for resolution. It's checking, we're doing the back of the driver's license because we're actually scanning the barcode that exists there, and that's going to help us do that check. We're going to save that. And then finally, Philip's asked on his mobile device, take a picture of yourself. So take a selfie. As that's happening on that mobile device, we're doing things like making sure that it's a live picture, not a photo of a photo. We're ensuring that the resolution is good, that there's a face in that picture. All of those things can happen within that process. Once those documents have been brought in and saved successfully, the final thing we're asking from Philip is, let's verify your birthday, okay? And that's something that we can check against that government repository. These aren't things that, and keep in mind, all of this data, the pictures that we're uploading, even the birth date that's going in here, isn't necessarily being stored on that person's profile within SecZetta. It's being used right now simply to verify that he is who he says he is. We can pull some of the data back if we like, but it's not necessary. Sometimes, you know, we don't want to necessarily be storing all of that personal information, particularly driver's license photos or the like. So I've submitted this identity proofing request. In the background, we're checking all of those systems, and we're making sure that Philip that has registered, the data that we have about Philip, is the person that's on the other end of this device. We've actually completed that verification successfully. We let Philip know that. Now, Philip's participation in this process is done. So at this point, Philip says, great, I've completed my registration, but we're not done in SecZetta yet. So obviously there can be, and this could be a simple process if they're perhaps a certain type of non-employee, but in this case, it's an IT consultant who's going to have access to a lot of information. So we want to take a couple extra steps to make sure we're good to get him onboarded. And so in this case, we're actually asking for sponsor approval. So we have assigned a sponsor for Philip, and that sponsor is within Z Corp. So Philip's going to come work with somebody at Z Corp as that sponsor. We've assigned that person. That person now has the job of approving Philip's onboarding. So we've requested it by Linda, our vendor admin. Philip has completed his registration and his proofing, and now we just want eyes on this from internal, so from Z Corp internally. So our sponsor here has that registration to look at an approval for Philip. We understand because they're getting this approval form, he's gone through identity proofing, we can collect a few more details from the sponsor. We can say, you know, we can ask questions about the project, about what kind of access they may need, about whether they're going to be on site, what location are they going to be working. In this case, we have pretty basic information. We're going to ask, you know, does Philip need remote access? Are we going to give him any equipment? Are we going to provide him any training? The way that the sponsor answers this will not only contribute to onboarding tasks that need to happen for Philip, but it can also contribute to his risk score, because somebody that's being provided remote access should probably be considered a little bit more high risk. Potentially training could lower that risk. If we're going to put him through some security training or some other type of training, perhaps his risk can come down. So these are different types of attributes that can apply to that risk score. In this case, our sponsor has selected those things. We're approving that process. We're still doing a couple more checks. We want to make sure. So in this case, we've done a risk check as we onboard Philip. We've calculated his risk score to be this 6.9. And so what we're doing here is we're just advising the sponsor, hey, and you know, Philip is considered high risk. We just want to let you know we're going to require that you revalidate him and his status every 30 days for as long as they're on board. So this is just one example of a type of workflow or process that risk score can essentially you know, contribute to. So in this case, it's a matter of every 30 days, we're going to reach back out to the sponsor to say, is Philip still engaged on this project? Should he still be active? If not, we need to remove his access. Okay. We could do that same sort of revalidation with Linda, our vendor admin, or you know, our vendor admin out at Acme, because Linda might know really well what his status is. We can make those assignments based on who's the most appropriate contributor to make those decisions and really revalidate that information. So I'm going to submit this. This was really just a notification, essentially, to the sponsor. At this point in time, Philip has been onboarded. We can go see Philip's record within the system. So Philip has a profile in SecZetta. He has a risk score that we talked about, that we put together. He also, at this point, we can do things like push data to downstream systems. And in this case, we've actually pushed Philip's data to SailPoint. And in that case, we've made this API call out to SailPoint. SailPoint now can provision that access that Philip's going to need when he starts. And we also have a link to what that identity now, in this case, ID is. Now these integrations to these downstream systems, whether it's Identity Now, Identity IQ, Omada, you know, CyberArk, Pings, all of those things, those are systems that we provide all of this rich contextual data to complete those joiner, mover, leaver workflows, any provisioning that needs to happen. And not only during the onboard, so now Philip's profile exists, we can do things like, you know, trigger these tasks to get him onboarded, but we're also going to provide periodic automatic workflows that will revalidate him and make sure that we know when it's time to remove Philip's access, which is key. That's really where the biggest problem area is around non-employees. Typically there's a huge drive to get them onboarded, right? And somebody might be right on top of creating that service desk ticket or sending that email to somebody to get them onboarded, but then it's forgotten because they have their access and now nobody really cares when that access gets removed. And maybe it's removed in a year during an Active Directory cleanup, or maybe it's, you know, removed in 90 days because we put an expiration on it, but that's not really an effective proactive way to manage the access for those non-employees. And that's what, you know, we as SecZetta can account for those things and make sure that people are getting into the system, making those updates when Philip is no longer active, when his project, you know, ends or completes, we can make sure that that's known and that that access is removed, again, by those direct connections to those downstream systems. So a couple of other things I'll point out that really are helpful within SecZetta. In managing all the non-employees within SecZetta, you can not only see the people that are engaged at the organization, but you can also see it in different ways. So we can, in this case at Z Corp, understand that Z Corp has three different vendors that they do business with. And I know we've talked about Acme Consulting already. So if I click into Acme Consulting, not only can I see the details about Acme, but I can also see all the people that are affiliated with Acme Consulting that are engaged. Okay, I can see that Philip is here, as well as Anne and Alyssa and William and all of these other people that we're engaging on different projects. And even more importantly than seeing it, I can take action at that vendor level. So I can do things like if Acme is breached, or if our relationship, if Z Corp's relationship with Acme ends, I can, with a single click and a single workflow, terminate the relationship, which can trickle down to all of the people that are assigned to Acme and deactivate their profiles, remove their access, things of that nature. I can also take action to perhaps do a new risk assessment, right, on Acme Consulting. So maybe we've engaged with them for a year. Now we want to re-up their vendor risk score, which in this case is low. We can kick off workflows to either reach out to external systems to pull in that risk score, or kick off a risk assessment within SecZetta. That's a workflow that gathers that information from the relevant parties. So while we've focused a lot on lifecycle and workflows at the identity level, we can build those same lifecycle workflows for vendors or even projects. So in this case, we can see who's assigned to a particular risk assessment. And potentially from multiple vendors, right? So we can do all of those sorts of things within SecZetta now that we have those people profiles in the system as well. So that was what I wanted to show this group today. There's so much more to see in SecZetta. The administration of the system is a very exciting, you know, piece as well. But that we'll have to save that for another time. We're kind of down to not a lot of time. What I do see that there are potentially some questions in the chat. So let me see if I can access that guy and go through some of those. Okay, so I will, I know there was a question here about GDPR compliance. So it says, how is data stored, or more specific, do you meet GDPR compliance? And we do. So SecZetta is a hosted solution. We are on AWS, and we're actually able to host in any location. So we can put that data in a particular geographic location if that's necessary. We also have definitely done a lot with multiple global companies around GDPR compliance. So that is definitely not a problem. And someone else asked about being cloud solution, and it is, as I mentioned, cloud. It's hosted. It is not an on-prem system either. Okay, and I think what I'll do here is maybe pass this back over to Chris.
Well, I think we had one more question at the bottom of the chat that I couldn't answer, which was regarding directory services such as Active Directory. What would the unique identifier immutable ID be used for a contractor?
Yeah, so when it comes to directory services, we're talking about Active Directory and the ID that's created within Active Directory, that's actually a function of an IGA solution, right? Or whatever is managing the provisioning to that directory. We can affect that. So for example, we can build those unique identifiers with whatever, the particular requirements are. So if it starts with a C and then is 6 numbers, if it, maybe is the first name, last name with a digit at the end of it, we can build those within SecZetta using a value builder and making sure that it is a unique value. We can do that, but we typically do push that to the systems that are actually provisioning those directory accounts.
And another question that came up earlier was, can we use this to manage bots or RPA? And
absolutely, yep. So we quite often, there are a lot of parallels when it comes to managing non-human entities or workers alongside human workers, and it's definitely something that we're doing for many of our customers. Specifically, you can think about devices or machines that are doing work, whether that's, maybe even an application. So quite often, applications need specific access via service accounts, for example. We're able to manage that authoritative record for that device or that non-human, that application, and then allow that to drive that downstream access even via service accounts and the like. So I also see that there was a follow-up question around is our solution, based on the fact that we're not creating directory accounts, is our solution dependent on an IAM solution such as MIM, or anything. I know I've talked about SailPoint and Omada and things like that. We're not reliant on it. It certainly is a fantastic process and story when you have one in place. So in many cases, if there's not an IGA solution, we can take other routes to get that provisioning done. And whether that is ticket creation within a ticketing system to allow for that in any process that's supported there. We can do it via email notifications or tasks being created directly within SecZetta for application administrators or directory, IT admins to go in and build those. We can certainly build, we can build the workflow to support all sorts of ways to complete that onboarding. The only thing we don't do is directly integrate with, and there are even some exceptions to this, but directly integrate with, say, Active Directory. It's just something that we believe requires an identity governance and access governance solution to fully, do the right way, essentially. So that's that.
Do we have any other questions? If we do, feel free to put them into the chat window or the Q&A window for that matter. So I think while we're waiting, I was just going to say that, should you have any further questions, if you're interested in a more in-depth demo with Jen, then please do get in touch with us, either Frederick or Anders from Arctic, or contact me directly. Contact details are here, and obviously we'll have a recording of this towards after we've completed. I haven't seen any other questions come up, so I think we are in good shape. Frederick, Anders, did you have anything to add to this at all?
I couldn't hear your question. Can you take that once more?
I was just saying, do you have anything else you wanted to add at the end here?
No. Thank you. I'm fine. It was a great presentation.
Great stuff. Well, look, guys, thanks very much for joining. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we can have the chance to have a more in-depth conversation at a later date.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ed.
All right. Thanks, everyone.